Yeah, competence has two dimensions. Most people at work think of competence as skills. I was a marketing guy, so I could I could analyze a market, I could read the market data, where our sales were coming from, all that sort of stuff. I could do the external customer-facing stuff or the press-facing stuff. The way we're looking at competence also, in addition to those competencies or skills, also includes the individual's belief in their ability to achieve their desired outcomes, their valued outcomes. So I don't want to get too deep into the psych language, but the psychological term that could also be used is self-efficacy, the belief in one's ability to achieve an outcome. So it sounds a little bit like confidence, and of course when we increase our skills, we tend to increase our confidence in the ability to apply those skills effectively to whatever the business organization's challenges or my job tasks are. Competence is what gets most airtime in organizations. We think in terms of an employee's skills. We ask them to write their resume based on the skills that they have and the outcomes. We don't want to hear a lot about their relatedness stuff or how they work really well with people and all that kind of stuff. We pretty much set the conversation up to focus on competence and the skill side of competence in particular, and then we infer that because they were successful in the past, they must be confident in their ability to be successful today.
Right.
But it's too much to go into perhaps now, but the presentation spends quite a bit of time on competence in the two ways that we mean it.
Right. Well, one of the things that I think after you now tell me about, I didn't really see the relationship, and maybe it was my own fault. I listened to Susan's presentation 2 or 3 times, and is the idea of flow. I mean, I think I know what flow is, but maybe for our listeners, that's a new term, or it needs to be defined in the way that you're using it, or Susan was using it.
Right. The way we talk about motivation as having a variety of potential forms, or we can have many experiences. One is to be intrinsically motivated, which means I'm engaging in my particular job task, or it's actually really easy to talk about intrinsic motivation when we think of our hobbies and our recreation time pursuits, because when we're intrinsically engaged in something, we're actually not paying attention to to an output that we're supposed to generate. So, for example, when I take the Jeep out into the desert and go off-roading with my buddies, there's no actual output there. I do it, I learn how to drive the technical rocks, and every year get better and better at doing much more technical driving instead of the 70 miles an hour across the dunes type of thing. But there's no output. And some would say when I'm in the zone, or I'm in that place where I'm so enjoying it, I am in joy, where time is a different sort of feeling, and I just feel contented and happy, that's akin to the flow state. Mm-hmm. There's another piece to it, though, which is that the feeling of being that engaged and fully on the sort of edge of our competence and devouring the task or the goal or the project doesn't mean that it has to be fun every second, right?
Right.
So I'm doing a doctoral degree right now. I promise you that is not fun every second. However, many, 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 many times throughout it, I feel like I'm on the right path in my life. I may not be pulling, an A+ on every assignment, and that doesn't even matter so much. I love the process of engaging in learning whatever it is that I'm working on, with the possible exception of some statistics. So the flow state is that kind of engagement where we feel like, yes, I am using myself appropriately. This is the right way for me to be living, even when I'm at work. Okay. And yes, it's hard, and yet it's still, we might not even sort of consciously process it this way. In fact, many people wouldn't. I'm much more sort of vocal about it, both as a teacher and just because that's how I am. But it's a sense of complete immersion in the moment, even if that moment is a struggle, and just knowing that that is absolutely the right thing to be engaged in.
So it really is. It's that magical place when your purpose and all of the, as they say, the stars align.
Yeah.
And you feel like that you're at the right place at the right time, doing exactly the right thing.
Right. Now, when a parent says to a child, "We really would like you to do what you most want to do in the world," I think that's very, very important, because it's much easier, I think, to have the flow experience or the intrinsic experience when we're engaged in something we naturally like to do.
Right.
We don't all get to do that. Just because I like driving the Jeep doesn't mean that I can make my way in the world driving the Jeep. So I have to, in my early days, people told me, "You should go into sales, you should go into sales, you should go into sales." And I said, okay. And I ended up in marketing and realized that really sort of wasn't my cup of tea, that I needed to be doing something different. But that...
I happen to go into accounting.
Yeah.
Marketing is where I find, that everything aligns. It's like it's not hard.
Mm-hmm. Now, where you will see this also happen is when to keep on the same story, where the child or a young adult says to their parents, "I just don't like it. I hate it." Why we ever force a 4-year-old to eat peas who doesn't like peas is beyond me. I mean, it's the same thing with work. I mean, if we're really smart, in terms of our motivation in the moment and our ability to experience vitality and joy and produce the important outcomes that it takes to, that matter to us, and that, the stuff that it takes to live in the world every day, it just is so helpful for us to not do what we really don't enjoy doing. So I love hearing when somebody says, "Oh my gosh, I couldn't stomach doing that." I'm like, wonderful. You were one step closer to knowing what you truly enjoy. Now, what can we do to help you move closer to that, either within your existing job or aspects of your existing job, or maybe down the road of an alignment into a completely different type of work? We're not espousing that, by the way, when we go into organizations to talk about motivation. We're not suggesting that people leave their jobs, but we are suggesting that they attempt to connect to the stuff that is naturally meaningful to them. And we do want organizations and the people in them, both at the employee and the sort of executive level, to be able to have the conversation about aligning the right person in the right role, not just based on their skills, based on what do they really want to bring.
Well, I think that that takes us back to that intrinsic and extrinsic motivation aspect of it, and you keep using the word joy, and I think that that's a very important word that needs to come back into our understanding of what is everything, what's it all about, Alfie, if you can say it that way.
Yeah.
Because I know for my personal self, I was really good at accounting, but I didn't find joy in it.
Right.
Because it was backward. It was backward looking. It was like it was already done. Who cares?
I resigned from a marketing director position once, which is a story that I usually reserve for pints of beer or wine and cheese or something. But the piece that's relevant here is that when I was in the resignation conversation with my boss, I said, I promised myself from this moment forward, I will never, ever again do work that is interesting but not important to me.
Right.
And, that had I had the technology of the motivation stuff that Susan and I talk about, and what psychology is teaching the world now, I would have been able to stay in that role and adjust and find the sort of gems that I could connect my true self to, and reposition distaste or dislike for certain aspects of it, I believe.